Okay, then we start. I'm going to the presentation. Okay, so we are talking about the ecosystem. First of all, Febe called me yesterday evening to tell that his father is probably having COVID, and he has to take care of him, and probably he will be locked up for the next days as well as a result of it. But okay, so I have to do it on my own. What are we going to talk about today? About the ELINF ecosystem, explaining it. Also going deeper about some topics that are relevant for our goals of the project, talking about metadata formats and in the different environments, information, education, research. And then how to integrate this information of the three environments. And we are talking then about integration, about interoperability, a word that we have used a lot during the last years. Then looking a bit at the software which are used, and about the alternatives and some issues of the software we are using at the moment, and specifically about ABCD and the status of eSFacil. Finally, I think it's not only about software, but it's also about working together and about your role and your tasks. I don't know if people already have experience with the software products we are using up to now, but I hope that we can later look how to integrate that, your knowledge in. Yes, is someone want to tell something? No, okay. How to integrate your knowledge in the project. So the first goal of the project is in fact to start with 4 different directions, 4 different networks. You have an educational network, you have an information network. We talk about library, but also a little bit larger than the library. It can be access to information outside the library, and also about research information, about research management. And English, you know that it is important in our work for informaticians, also for information specialists, to know the basics of the language of English. An aspect is a very important aspect is the aspect of policies, looking at these different platforms, but also how to integrate that in an information network. We look at it on the point of view of policies. We worked the last years a lot on open education, open access, open science, about these topics. And it's an important element also to combine the information over the different platforms to get to an integrated information network. And we are talking also about a development and maintenance community. And that development and maintenance community, that's you here, who will, and also the people of group 2, who will be part of that community, who are part of that community. So the ELINF ecosystem. In the end, the larger part of the realization is to get 3 elements in the end. it's about the learning environment, a research platform, but also about information management, library management. But all is based in the end on content and on the use of what is called authority control. Content that can be an article, that can be data, that can be information about a research group, can be a lot of different things. But to define it well, we need to define everybody, every organization very well. And we need also to define the content very well. Is there, I hear, Faber has joined us, I see. Hello, Faber.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. So, but this is in the end the ELINF ecosystem that has been developed in 2015 already. But what we have is different levels of content, levels of authority to make this content unique, and simply to get all the information for people who are learning or for people who are researching. And we need a relation between all these aspects. And we need also the policies to bring all the information together. And so, okay, this is the basic idea of the project, to get this all integrated. And therefore, we are using open source software solutions. Mostly in the past years, we worked with Moodle, ABCD, DSpace, Moodle for the learning environment, ABCD for the library, DSpace for the institutional repository, for bringing together the publications from the different universities. At UCLV, I think, and Pinar del Rio, these are the most advanced institutional repositories. We extended also the possibilities for research, management of research output by looking at Vivo. At the same time, we see that in the CEIBA project, they are working for collecting information and for building up a research evaluation system in Venio. And we are looking as a possible alternative at Polaris OS. There are other very interesting software tools, but I think these are at the moment our most relevant platforms, software packages that we are working with or looking at. So another aspect is, besides the software, is also looking at the content. And the content that we are looking at is about metadata and how to control that. And therefore, I put these two definitions. Metadata is simply data about data. And it is simply the basic of of an article that is, for example, collected in metadata. The basics of an organization can be described in metadata. But the question is, how are we going to work with it? And that's something that we are looking immediately further on. But also, if you're using metadata, everybody can define it in its own way. You can define a person who is writing a book as an author. You can define a person who is doing research as a researcher. What is the similarity? What is the same? How is his name written in one time? How it is written in another way? And how can we make it that it is understandable for machines, for example? And there, authority control is playing an important role. So, for example, in library management system, you have for the metadata what is called a MARC format. It doesn't have anything to do with me. It's but at the same time, and also I'm not really fond of the MARC format. It's in fact a format that has been developed before the development of the SQL, the databases, before NoSQL, and so it's a very old system that in the first place was developed to make with computers library cards, paper cards. But okay, it has a way of describing objects, and in this case, the example is of a person. It is based on codes. You have the 100 code is specifically for people and specifically for all the elements in a person, his name, his surname, and so on. How you can link it, how you can make relations. It's all included in the description of that person. And ABCD is using MARC, the MARC format for the library management system. But if we look, for example, at institutional repositories, they have used a more modern format, but a very simple metadata format, which is based on what is called Dublin Core, on 15 different elements, basically. In the past, there was a first extension using qualifiers, and DSpace, for example, are using this way still, with elements and qualifiers. You see, for example, an element is contributor, and its qualifier is contributor.author. And so you can bring together different types of contributors. You have an advisor, you have a designer, you have different types of contributors. And so you have the possibility to work on two levels to describe your information. But only in the end, you describe it only on two levels. And that's one of the limitations of Dublin Core, Dublin Core Qualified. There are extensions, but they are not really standard. There are application profiles where you describe more of the metadata in the end, and where you can go more in depth. But okay, it's another type. You already see what is the problem. Here you describe the author in one field, in the other you describe the author in the other field, in another format. And for example, e-learning platforms are using LOM a lot, and to describe a lot of an educational object. You can give a lot of description about its the learning resource type, for example, about copyright in the 6th element. You can describe a lot of information. You also can describe, and I think it's somewhere in the 5. It's not. I don't see it immediately. You have the title here. You have the language, keywords, and again, it's another format. A format developed in e-learning platforms, which doesn't have anything to do with the library system. It doesn't have anything to do with institutional repositories. Also, more and more in research information systems, they are looking at more linked ontologies, linked data ontologies. Very common at the moment is the SERI format, and it is based in fact on the principles of RDF, for example, of linked data, where you have entities with qualifications and other entities and relations between. For example, a journal has an academic article, and in that academic article there is an author, and so on, and that author has relates to its individual V card, and so on. About the concepts, that's another important part. We talk about SCOS, and also the academic article has subject areas which are described in SCOS. Okay, so this gives an idea about the metadata, and you see every way of domain, every domain has developed its own way of describing metadata, and so we have an issue on that. Therefore, we need to look a little bit how to standardize that. In a Moodle, you have a teacher, you have different other elements, and so on. You have organizations, you have keywords, you have a title. Title is something very specific, but a teacher, an author over these pages, an author over Vivo, or in a library system, they are all people. And it would be nice to have that defined in a similar way over the different platforms. The same in the end with organizations and with keywords and subjects. There are other types in publications that are also uniquely identified. We talk about ISBN, ISSN, DOI, and such things like that. You already see with DOI and ISBN, these are numbers, and in a way, working with identifiers will help us to standardize and to use authority systems on that. So we are looking at these different types of metadata because in the end, the project and the issues that we see over the different platforms is about interoperability between metadata of different platforms, of the information, the education, and the research network. And that's for us now specifically in VLIRED Cuba. So different metadata formats and ontologies are used. We have seen that. And because simply there is another culture and another necessity. In educational communities, you need to describe all your educational objects in relation with a teacher and a student. In a library, you describe books, articles, publications, data sets nowadays, and in repositories you do it the same, specifically in relation to the author and to the reader, or to the user of that object. Therefore, it's logic that these cultures are developing in different ways. So we, as FLIR at Cuba, doesn't want to have now one system that replaces everything. It will not work. Every community has done it because they need it in that way. So what we need to look at is to have over the different platforms shared conventions that a person as a teacher or as an author or as a researcher is described in the same way. That we use keywords to describe the same vocabularies in the different platforms. That's a basic necessity. So it means, for example, that I'm looking if with the yes, it's still working. To be sure if the recording is working. It's important that, for example, we use authority systems for people. In Moodle, there exists the element role. And in the role, you can describe the role of a teacher, but you also can add his ID attribute to that element. In that way, that person is uniquely defined. We have contributors, different type of contributors. If we can say this contributor has an identification, we can use that. In vivo ontologies, this is linked data, so every object is defined by a URI. Persons also can be defined by a URI in that way. And for MARC 21, there are possibilities to have field links and elements used again. So if in the different metadata formats we are including or we are making a relation with a unique system of identification, and for people, for researchers, we have ORCID. For teachers, we can also use that sometimes. Or we have to look at another system locally in Cuba to have over the different platforms an identification for the same over the different platforms. That's one part. Also, another important aspect is to define the keywords over the different platforms. And SCOS concepts are already used in Vivo, and Seba is also using the SCOS concepts. Why not trying to integrate that in Moodle, LOM, and in MARC and in ABCD as well? So, integrating of the metadata from different environments is only possible if we are using authority systems. We have information environment, we have the learning environment, and we have the research environment. And Authoritas, as a tool that has been developed, can link it. There are tools that also can do it, but like Scosmos. But Scosmos is only focused on vocabularies and on the SCOS basis. Now, SEBA is also working on authority. Maybe on that level, we also have to look what they can offer us. But the idea is not only to have it linked in a way, but to create services that we easily can integrate the information of the research environment or the DSpace publications in the information environment. That from the learning environment, you have services to, for example, course material in the library that is immediately visible in the learning environment, suggestion list, and so on. A very important part of integration is between learning environment and research environment, where people can act on one level as a teacher and on the other level as a researcher, with topics which are as well available as learning material as research results. And research results doesn't have only to be publications. It can be data sets. It can also be information about the research groups and such things like that. But to link research entities with learning entities, it is important to use authority systems. So, one aspect is to have over the different platforms information which is based on the same principles. But at the same time, the different platforms, research, education, and information platforms, only can do something with it if they can communicate with each other on the data and on the user level. And that means that we have to think about solutions to realize that. How can Moodle be open to get information from a research platform, and in the other way around? Are we going to look at bus systems where every platform work with a common bus to share the information? Are we thinking about resolving the issue with linked data solutions with queries over HTML, or with REST APIs that can be queried? These are approaches that we have to look at, to work on. So, one of the tools, anyway, that is working at the moment is Authoritas. So, this is a step, a very important step. But it's, in fact, on the level, it works on the level of the authority control, but can sometimes be used also for searching over the different platforms based on these authority systems in Authoritas. It has a few functionalities, and it can help with searching for personal author information. But as you see, it is always about identifiers, and every identifier has an ID. This is an identifier out of a SCOS vocabulary, and in the SCOS vocabulary, data management systems has the code. What is it? 10,010,029.52. That code. it's a basic idea to work with unique identifiers linked to terms in this case. But it can also be a unique identifier linked to a journal, a unique identifier linked to a person, and so on. And Authoritas has functionalities to search that. On that level, it's a tool that can be reused. Other tools are in a process, and then I have some doubts at the moment, and I will tell you immediately why. But first of all, the other tool that has been developed up to now is in development is eSFacil. The idea is, in fact, to do some automated metadata extraction, to do some enrichment based on cross-ref open databases like cross-ref, for example, but also closed databases, and adding information about a person, about people, about people, about subjects, and so on, and finally to get a metadata record for DSpace, ABCD, and so on. Now, one of the ideas was to realize it, to start the realization was in 2016 already. 2016-17, something like that. That the first ideas about eSFacil. We are 4 years further, and what we see is that a lot of the existing software, like DSpace, like Invenio, like Polaris OS, have integrated this workflow. So the question is maybe, what is the relevance of eSFacil? It's something to think about anyway. Or how can we reorient it to make it an interesting tool based on our knowledge, based on our development up to now? So what we see is that I put in the beginning this ELINF ecosystems, and what we see is that we have now new challenges and opportunities. I already mentioned the questions about eSFacil, about dark archive that is also an element of eSFacil. What are we going to do with it, or how are we going to adapt ourselves to the new realities? Another aspect is that at the moment all the universities are using DSpace 6. And DSpace 7 is revamping completely of the interface and adding a lot of new functionalities, from entities to metadata extraction and enrichment. So it's surely a software to look at, to see if it is how we can work further. If we are looking simply at DSpace 6 as our platform, or that we have to move to DSpace 7, for example. There are also new opportunities, and for example, Polaris OS is an interesting software that is at the moment evaluated by some people of PINAR at the moment. We hope that also other people are joining, because at the moment it's a group, it's a professor with 2 or 3 students of informatics of ICT people, but we need also some information specialists to look at it, to evaluate it. So this is surely interesting. I think also that the developments of CEBA by Pinar del Rio is also something that can be relevant as well for the authority control aspect, as well as for aspects of management, research output management. At the end, there is also a very important issue, a difficult issue about the library management system. ABCD has been developed and is now, the latest development is now 2-3 years old, but we understood, we received a message that GISIS, which is at the core of ABCD 3.0, will not be supported anymore. It is possible that Polaris OS can help us to resolve that problem, or that we have to look at other type of software. But you see that we have to look at these issues to be able to resolve the issues in the realization of the ELINF ecosystem. So, and I'm finishing now with this slide about the strategy to realize the ELINF ecosystem. I think in the next weeks you will see a lot. You will hear a lot of other presenters like Frederick, like Fede, like Rudy, who will explain a lot about cooperation. And I think you have seen that we are we have different platforms, but at the same time, these platforms, we want to have an integration and interoperability between these platforms. So it means also that on the level of the teams, we need cooperation between the different teams. Cooperation between to understand how to integrate authority systems, and also how to create tools to exchange information, to make information available for other for other platforms. We also have to look at our development in progress, and as I said, that we have to look at ABCD and about eSFacil. These are things that we have to work on in the next weeks to come to a strategy, which is for a large part also looking at authority control. How to integrate authoritas in different platforms and use authority systems for others in cooperation also with the Tokororo and CEBA projects. And query services to access the data in the different environments and how to reuse them. Okay, this is a task that we will have to look at. I'm going to where are we? Oops. And that we will come back to it in a later stage. First of all, we will look at these cooperation principles, looking at open source software, the cooperation problem principles, introduction to DevOps, and so on. But we will also look at the different platforms. And you see around the 11th of June it will be probably postponed until the 14th of June. We will start to discuss after looking at the implementation of all these approaches. Also, how are we going further with the ELINF ecosystem? And in the end, with the knowledge, with the information you will get in the next weeks, we are coming back to this issue, because at the end, on the 5th of July, I hope that we come to a sort of new strategy based on what we have done in the past year, but with new input, with also a lot of new knowledge based on the different sessions before. Also, we hope that in July